Recall which role you default in the victim, rescuer, perpetrator, drama triangle, and realize that each position is a disempowering role stemming from a lack of personal power and accountability, knowing that taking accountability will help to breed empowerment. These roles are a result of our individual shadows and blind spots. So first observe, then analyze your patterns, i.e. reactions and behaviors, to see what lessons are being presented and repeated in an attempt to get your attention, and begin making empowering changes by taking ownership. It is the discomfort and conflict that may actually serve as motivation for us to take necessary change to transform it. If we desire change, we must be willing to do what it takes to have appropriate action to do so. Otherwise, we limit solution-oriented thinking that will be useful throughout our lives to carry us through other challenging times. Again, it's not we hope our situation will get better, we hope we will become better. If we merely hope that someone will rescue us from all of the wrongs in our lives, we stay in a victim position and will depend endlessly on others to bail us out without employing our own skills and developing them and leaning on our own wisdom. And on the flip side, if we encounter people who are in need, we may desire to help them, but they who are in need are not always those who are willing to make proper changes and adjustments, such as personal improvements. So be watchful of enrolling in the rescuer role. When we do attempt to help those who do not wish to change the often self-imposed challenges in their lives, our efforts are in vain and they are not ready for help. This takes us back into the cycle of the codependency model. Their contribution may not be equal to yours, but their efforts and sacrifice must match your own. Again, help others who are willing to help themselves is generally a good golden rule. So look for tendencies to blame and accuse others for wrongdoings. This is an ill attempt to place the problem outside of ourselves in hopes to make it someone else's fault because we fail to recognize our part as a result of our blind spots. We will never be given greater challenges than we can actually bear. So that means that you have the power that lies within you to overcome your present circumstances in your life. And there's an actual science to this that we can explore throughout the rest and series of this panacea. This is very empowering. If you have not yet been able to change the negative circumstances in your life, be patient and tell yourself that you are now acquiring the knowledge and skill to overcome these undesirable life lessons, or that you are experiencing a deeper level of growth as a result of it. And perhaps whatever resistance and challenge you're experiencing, it will help to fuel your hunger so that you will be willing to grow wherever needed in order to become more solution-oriented. Sometimes you need to be the one to initiate change by being willing to accept help. So be ready and willing when it comes. Do not foolishly allow pride to interfere. That will trump us every time. Einstein once said that wisdom requires us to be aware of our weaknesses. Do not take for granted the opportunity to learn about yourself and see where there is a need for improvement, for experience is a great teacher. Take all feedback that comes to you as a positive indicator to gauge what changes you need to make. The most successful people don't look at failure as negative, they look at it as positive feedback where they can have room to grow. So let everything that comes to you be for your good and your benefit to help you succeed. Surrender to the lesson. Yes, even the persistent messenger that you keep trying to avoid but continues to show up in your life in various ways to deliver a message is exhibiting a mirror to you. So listen to the message. This keeps showing up for you because these are your lessons, not the messengers. Again, don't shoot the messengers. Indeed, correction and change may be difficult at times to endure, yet we ought to delight in its opportunity because we are worth the time and the effort. Using a combination of both conscious, directed effort from the prefrontal cortex and emotion from the limbic system, we can make deliberate changes in our lives. And in the pamphlet entitled The Inspired Youth, it reads, "We have freedom of choice that carries with it moral responsibilities for our actions. While we are free to choose for ourselves, we are not free to choose the consequences of our actions." This message illustrates how the basic laws of physics and other universal laws of cause and effect interacts in our life. We need to learn to be congruent to it. And the more incongruent we are to these immutable and universal laws will show up as consequences as where we need to continue to be in alignment with it. Accountability yields empowerment. By learning to be accountable for everything that happens in our life, we can recognize that we are always at the helm, steering our own ship and in the driver's seat, leading our own destiny, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. And this is not about vilifying ourselves, but it is fundamentally about achieving self-empowerment through methods of self-actualization and newfound awareness. With every thought of intention, action, and emotion that is transmitted from you, a person sets into motion unseen chains of effects, which vibrate from the mental plane of thought through the entire cellular structure of the body, out into the environment, and finally out into the cosmos. Eventually, the vibratory energy returns to the original source upon the swing of the pendulum. If you don't ever brush your teeth, you'll end up with cavities. If you flip on a light switch, the light will turn on. If you live a sedentary life, you may experience fatigue and obesity, and etc., under the basic laws of cause and effect. So here's a little exercise for you. By choosing to no longer identify as a victim, you can begin to step into an empowering behavior and find emotional freedom from the world. This is one of the first and foremost steps into personal mastery and helps to release trapped emotion, internally awakening the dreamer. So here are some questions to consider. Ask yourself, am I feeling separated, disconnected, shameful, or inadequate in this presenting problem or with a particular individual? More specifically, am I feeling hurt? And remember, sometimes it could be difficult to go to the emotion, but once we can take accountability, it will spark new empowerment in our life, shifting our experience for the better. These feelings appear when we blame or project judgment onto others and are the same feelings of hurt, separation, and powerlessness, and the shame or feelings of inadequacy from our own act of separation by not connecting to our own internal empowerment. And this will keep us stuck more than anything. This is the premise behind projection behaviors. It's the internal mirror where we are exhibiting from poor coping by taking the pain away from ourselves and expressing it outwardly, which is very common. And this is one method in how we may have developed unhealthy mechanisms of anesthetizing the pain or trying to escape the pain. This requires high self-awareness and takes practice to see ourselves through the behaviors of others. Often the relationship mirror is the areas in ourself where we hope to grow and find self-confidence. We must acknowledge that what we actually desire is freedom from the issue rather than focusing on the issue that's being mirrored to us in our relationships, and to recognize it or vocalize it. When we honor our vocal expression, it helps us to come to terms with the truth and free the trapped inner emotion. And remember, these are high caliber ways of living and recognizing its new levels of self-awareness. Here is another mindful exercise and personal analysis questions. When you have an event that activates a trigger or negative emotional reaction, simply notice it and name it to retrain the prefrontal cortex at the time of the event and become conscious of new and adaptive coping strategies. So think of a name to identify a current pattern or emotional reaction you would like to change, such as, I don't feel good enough. And see that as old programming you're ready to overcome. Ask, is what I'm doing to trigger this emotional reaction effective or ineffective? Is it helpful or harmful? Is my reaction to this trigger effective or more harmful, efficient or costly? And what is the cost versus the payoff? Does it make me feel good about myself or bad about myself? What impact does it have on me? And what impact does it have on others? What need or emotion feels repressed that needs to be vocalized or expressed? Mindful practices help us to create awareness moving forward in healthier behaviors, coping responses, and choices. Experiment with these practices when you experience distress. This practice integrates anchoring and accountability from the wise mind to make the long-term changes toward personal empowerment and making room for a better and healthier identity, letting go of the old identity. And this will complete the end of this strategy, and we will move on to the next step of the panacea. Thank you so much for joining me.